folks. How is everybody? Just a
Doing
warning
well.
to the chat. We have at least on my end, a far bigger lag than usual between YouTube and what we're seeing. So if it looks like I am not paying attention to people's chats, it may simply be it hasn't gotten to me yet. So apologies. EV Mux is EV Muxing. So today is the season finale for season 2 of Slice and Dice. Not that the show actually ends, we'll just be doing other things for a couple of months. But I'm hoping we have kind of a banger of a topic tonight, especially with the dropping of the Odyssey trailer. I thought it would be a lot of fun to talk history. And specifically, how important is it to actually stick to real history when we're talking fiction? And I assume there'll be a little chunk in there about whether or not the Odyssey counts as fiction or nonfiction, considering the strangeness of its own background. As always, for anybody who hasn't been here before, we'll do some quick introductions. So if we want to go clockwise, just your name, and since we're not doing games today, maybe a quick one-liner on your general stance on historical accuracy. Grim?
Okay, I'm Grim. I'm a game designer, primarily. I also write fiction. I did study history. My stance is, as with most things, when it comes to fiction addressing history, I think you should aim for a certain degree of plausibility rather than accuracy, necessarily. It needs to feel right.
Okay. T-shirt.
Hi, I'm T-shirted historian, an actual, real historian. And all I'm going to say is we continue to play games that have a basis in medieval fantasy. Therefore, you have nations and things that have developed in the same ways that apparently the old English used to, with weapons technology advancing to long swords and crossbows and everything else, all the way straight up to the Renaissance. You have all these different weapons and armors that were developed during that time period, and yet we're supposed to apply it to a fantasy world where elves, goblins, dwarves, and all these other things live, and yet humans didn't take anything from those designs, when we all know, in fact, that humans are insane about stealing ideas from other cultures where possible. So, in the first place, the whole medieval role-playing thing is just kind of like, this is screwed up to begin with. So, beyond that, it's kind of like, if you're going to establish rules that there's a medieval hierarchy and all this other stuff, you need to justify why it is the way it is. Why did humans in this world develop exactly like the medieval English and Italians and all this other stuff, develop the same level of technology, live at this same level of technology when they have access to things like magic?
That was a very long sentence.
It was. It was.
Well, and I have to kind of ask just a follow-up. What do you think about things that are not fantasy? Like Gladiator, which is, has some names that are in history but are not used properly, or 300, which was an event that they then turned into a comic book.
Okay, 300 comes from a comic book, so...
Yes, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. So, as far as it visually looks awesome because it looks exactly like the comic book, but its basis in reality is horribly shallow and misrepresentative. And as far as Gladiator goes, I mean, they got one thing right, and that was, that the Colosseum was in Rome. No, I mean, as far as their historical accuracy, as far as the costuming and stuff like that, yeah, it's fine. But as far as, who was fighting who and that sort of thing with what kind of weapons and all that, it's a little sketch.
Okay. Random, you recently did a very fabulous and very long breakdown of Spartacus.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have strong feelings about this based on that, or if you.
So, yeah, with Spartacus, it's a little bit different because I would kind of like the visual style of Spartacus is in line with something like 300, but there's nothing in it that is straight up fantasy. You know, it will have exaggerated things where people can take a lot more punishment than they could in reality, but it's not like there's, you know, you don't have a Cyclops showing up, for example. So I would view that a little bit differently to something like the Odyssey. But I guess the short version of what I think here, and I'm more than willing to have my mind changed on this, is that if your film or story is a piece of historical fiction, then its primary purpose is to entertain. And if it gets some of the details right, then well done. I think that where it will cross a line is going to depend on the context of the film or the story. So, for example, something like Schindler's List, if that was inaccurate, or if there are inaccuracies in that, which, I mean, there are going to be inaccuracies in that, but, you know, if it turned out that a particular character that the film presented as real was just completely made up and the film tried to conceal that, then that, I think, would be misrepresenting history. Because I would also say that something like Schindler's List, it's not designed to entertain you. It's designed to engage you and inform you, which I think is different to something like 300 or Gladiator or Spartacus or whatever.
Okay. Let me say a quick hello to the chat, who I think are still wandering in a bit, because I think probably Jack's show is still going at this point. But Legatus, I think his first comment was left, I don't know, like 2 days ago or something like that. So as always, Legatus is first. Legatus is one of our mods and absolutely fabulous. And thank you very much for being here every week. Rachel, hello. I think we have missed you a couple of times. It's good to see you back. Love Eves too, is that correct? Low Eves too. Sorry, my eyesight's going these days too. Welcome. Good to see you. Eraser is our other mod, also here. And Eraser says, I blame EV Mux. Shocker. And Eraser saying, here we go, has made me realize that Honey Amazon isn't here yet. Because Honey Amazon will come in at some point announcing that I am here, because that's what he always does. So I think I kind of want to start and see if we have like some kind of common ground. I think we can all agree that if something is, you know, completely fanciful, or even like Game of Thrones, which was, you know, very loosely based on European history. Hello, Ben. But very much designed to entertain. I don't think anyone is too worried about that being accurate. On the other hand, I would also assume that we can agree that if you are, for instance, doing the history of Cleopatra and make vast changes to her life while calling it a historical documentary, that's probably irritating. Are we all in agreement on that front?
Yeah.
I don't care what they taught you in school. Cleopatra was black. My grandmother told me that.
Yeah, that actually happened, didn't it?
Yes, I think that was.
It did.
I think that was a pretty good imitation, actually. So
that's kind of just briefly to go off of that. That's kind of what I mean about the intention behind the work and whether it's meant to like inform or entertain. Mm-hmm. Is that was a documentary, right? Or was it a dramatization? What exactly was it? It was the Netflix.
It was supposed to actually be a historical
documentary.
Yeah.
It
more so than Schindler's List, even.
It had historians weighing in on it from time to time, and of course, they only picked historians that 100% went along with the whole Cleopatra is black thing. When in fact, they've found more recent archaeological evidence that suggests that Egyptians were actually a lot closer to Europeans, which It wouldn't matter anyway because Cleopatra was from the Ptolemaic line, and the Ptolemies were Macedonian Greeks, so she was about as black as Grimm is.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Um,
Check your penis size, Grimm. That's the big indicator, right?
Oh my god, I am black.
There you go.
Or possibly a mule.
So many jokes.
You could always, you rent that out, and make some good money on that.
Wait a minute, that's not my penis.
Oh.
Sorry, we'll be good. Promise.
Yeah. No, you won't. That'll last about 5 minutes. I was tempted to make a joke about do I have to separate the two of you?
Can you?
What about does how far back in history it goes make a difference? Something like Schindler's List, I had grandparents that, remembered that versus, if you're doing the Northman, which is far enough back that very few people honestly are gonna know the historical difference between like the Northman and like the television show The Vikings, where everyone is dressed in like biker leathers and has shaved heads.
Yes, and they have a black jarl who actually has a historical name. Yeah, that worked. A black female jarl.
I think it'll affect people's perception. I personally wouldn't attribute any different criteria to whether or not it's good or whether or not it's being faithful or respectful or whatever. But yeah, like you say, if it's about a period in history that is much further back, people are going to know less about it beforehand compared to, Saving Private Ryan or whatever.
Yeah. And if you go back far enough, the line between myth and history starts to get a bit wobbly.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things about the Odyssey is that's almost more like a lore thing than the history thing. Are you staying true to the lore? Because unless you believe that gods were actually wandering around with, the heroes of the day, you have to assume that there's some license in Homer's work.
Yeah. But then, the Siege of Troy did happen. Though people weren't sure about that for quite a long time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bit like setting a film in World War II and having something supernatural happen, which you can do, but you're not trying to present that as a historical story.
Mm-hmm. Then it's just a story that happens to take place in a historical period.
There's going to be a bunch of examples of that kind of thing, in particular with like World War I and World War II movies. Like one that comes to mind, or two that come to mind. One would be Dead Snow, and the other would be Overlord. Like both of them take a huge amount of creative liberties with what actually happened during the war, but they're kind of using that as a jumping off point, and no one is treating that or watching that as a documentary, nor should they be, because obviously they are inaccurate. Does that mean that they should get things, basic things like the uniforms that the various sides wore? Should they get that correct? I would say yes, but I also wouldn't care enough if the film was good. It wouldn't destroy the movie if the planes were the wrong color or whatever. That was something in Pearl Harbor. I really do not like Pearl Harbor at all. But if Pearl Harbor was really good, I wouldn't care that Michael Bay had changed the color of one of the airplanes, I can't remember which one it was, to make it more readable for the audience. Because altering things like that for it to be communicated clearly to the audience, that happens all the time in movies. And I think that kind of thing should generally be prioritized over being 100% accurate.
And with mythology as well, it doesn't really sit separate from history necessarily. Because these stories are woven into cultures and those cultures' history as well. So if you are not at least somewhat respectful or doff the cap to the beliefs a little bit, you're creating problems for yourself. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example that's not horrendous. So there are still quite a lot of Norse pagans around, and they get very upset when their beliefs get misrepresented. And those things are important to Northern European culture, right across the Scandinavian and Nordic regions. There's a lot of these people. So, it behooves you to be at least a little bit careful, maybe, in how you represent those beliefs, and that you don't overwrite ones that are very important to people. And that can even happen with more modern cases. Like the story of the Little Mermaid is very, very important in its home country. It's a sort of symbolic national tale, and so when people dick with it, people get upset. I get terribly upset about what Walt Disney did to Winnie the Pooh, and that's a sort of foundational English text, and that's not that old at all.
Oh, come on now. You love what's going on with the Rings of Power. I mean, that's just...
Silencio.
No, seriously. I mean, it's like, okay, Lord of the Rings is fantasy, and you could almost call it a historical fantasy because of how it's presented and how in depth the whole Lord of the Rings is. And of course you actually get to the films, and like I said, men and stuff still have kind of a medieval style of dress and armor and weaponry, despite the fact that there's orcs and hobbits and dwarves and elves and all this other stuff running around.
I assume this is the reason that the races are sort of pictured as being kind of isolated, and there's not a lot of really heavy. Everyone talks about Tolkien like it's high magic, but actually it's pretty. It's not actually a whole lot of magic in Lord of the Rings in the grand. I mean, compared to what we see now. So.
Not really. I mean, and the only people who wield it are like, Gandalf, who only calls himself an angel because it makes more sense than him walking around and telling people, well, I'm actually, an angel, not a, I'm a wizard, not an angel,
Yeah.
But I mean, think of how many people would be pissed if, you're busy watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy and they're going up against the Balrog, and then Aragorn pulls out an M79 grenade launcher and blasts that fucker right in the face. I mean,
yeah,
you'd be upset. Yeah. You'd be extremely pissed about that. And it's almost the same kind of a feeling with what I see in the trailer for the Odyssey, which, like, for example, like the Legostrians are supposed to be these skin-wearing ogres that encounter Odysseus's men. And yet in the film, they're dressed in plate armor, which is technologically superior to what the Greeks were using at the time. In fact, the Greek armor in this show is completely wrong, 100%. But these ogre guys are wearing plate steel armor. I mean, a bunch of half-wit giants are more technologically advanced than the most technologically advanced people at the time. Really?
I'm still just as irritated about the fact that their armor is perfectly clean and doesn't have a single dent.
Yeah, it's uniform. I mean, it's like, it's almost mass produced, which is something that I wouldn't expect to see either. Because I'm thinking, I get that armor makers and stuff, get certain shapes and things like that, but not every single piece of armor that comes out of the same smith is necessarily going to look rivet for rivet the exact same. That takes...
Maybe you didn't pay for the abs.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. But
there's one scene too in the trailer where the helmets look kind of plastic.
Oh yeah, the Greeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they are. Or fiberglass.
Same thing as with the armors and Excalibur. I think there's a big difference between Excalibur and the Odyssey, though. I mean, Excalibur is supposed to be a fun, high fantasy thing, whereas the Odyssey is supposed to be like an epic poem.
It's more believable to think that Arthurians would have plate armor, despite the fact that they didn't actually have them at that point in history, than it is to believe that, there's plate armor in ancient Greece, when the highest developed metal at that point is iron.
What's really crazy to me is that Nolan is famous for bringing in, scientific researchers to work on Interstellar to make sure he gets everything right. But he couldn't bring in a historian for the
That's
armor and
that's what's making me want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not that, I mean, I do like Nolan a lot, but I'm not going to defend everything he's made, because he's made at least 2, maybe I could be argued to 3 movies that are not good.
Yeah.
And
so there's definitely Tenet. What else are we?
Oh, I mean, Tenet I enjoyed, but I would not defend it as a good movie, because I'm not convinced that it made any sense. But
Dark Knight Rises was pretty terrible.
Dark Knight Rises is awful. That is the one that I would say is like, how on earth did he make this?
I forget. Is that the first or the third one? Because the
third one.
The third one's god awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got,
apparently he did not want to make the third one, though. He only intended it to be a 2-movie
That
thing.
doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
I love how he lures. I love how he lured all of the cops underneath the city in the sewers, and they're down there for months or so, somehow surviving. And then when they emerge from the sewers, their outfits are completely clean. They're not showing any signs of malnourishment or anything.
So that's some genuine period Greek armor. So maybe you can understand why he didn't have people in the real thing.
Yeah, I really don't take any kind of issue with Nolan or anyone else not using that in a movie, because unless it's trying to be really, really, really accurate, which if you're doing that, then more power to you. But I don't take any kind of issue with them not doing that. That's not to say that there isn't a line. I would consider myself like a layman when it comes to this kind of thing. The plate armor does seem out of place, but it doesn't seem as out of place to me as, Julius Caesar with a minigun, for example. But based on the years in between the technology, that may in fact be the case. I don't know, because I'm not a historian. But the layman, I would imagine, would probably not take an issue with that. But either way, like, this is why I'm somewhat willing to give Nolan the benefit of the doubt until I see the movie, because the Odyssey has fantastical elements in it. These are non-humans. I could see there being some kind of justification for them having, better technology than we might expect. But if they literally say, no, this is plate armor and it's infinitely better than what the Greeks have, then that will obviously be very silly.
I think if he changes the core of the myths, the actual form of the stories, I think that will be a problem. Consider the most recent version of Animal Farm, for example. Now, I'm broadly sympathetic to the politics that they chose to put in instead, but you shouldn't muck with that. It has a very definite story to it. It's trying to make a quite specific point, and then if you dicker with it, it's no longer doing that. So that's a very recent example of where the core of the story has been lost through people thinking they can do it better or don't have any responsibility to present the original story. So with this, I mean, provided it has the elements and the broad story structure and lessons from the mythology, I think a lot of the rest can be forgiven, because it is as much myth as history.
I find so I also am, a lay person when it comes to the whole armor thing, but I'm really pretty intensely passionate about language and the usage of words. And what got to me immediately
Modern
after
language.
immediately after the "why is everyone so clean" was the use of the word daddy.
Yep.
And I flinched. Like, I actively flinched.
Yeah, he's chosen to use modern language, which is a horrible idea. Oh, also, I should point out, too, there was a film that was made much earlier than this one called Troy. And yes, the armor in that was all wrong, too. But we accepted it because it was cool and it was fun. And, it was just kind of like, hey, man, I don't care if the armor's wrong. This film looks amazing. I mean, and it was. I mean, I got to admit, though, Peter O'Toole absolutely 100% stole that show from Brad Pitt.
Random, if you can remind me. So I watched all of your Spartacus videos, and I remember you talking about the fact that they had attempted to avoid, was it the use of the word I?
Yeah. So they essentially made it all up. It wasn't that they were, because some people thought that they were translating Latin so that it sounded, so that it was essentially you were translating the specific words into English, but the sentence structure would be similar to how people would have spoken at the time. That's not what they did. They basically just went with the rule of cool. So there were no hard and fast rules. They spoke in a stylized, archaic manner that the writers thought was appropriate. And for the most part, I think it really does work because, like, there isn't another show that I can think of that does that. Things like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, and I assume Vikings, although I haven't seen it. They are going to make changes, like to use the dad example. You're not going to say dad in fantasy. You're going to say father, or maybe some other archaic word.
Sire.
Yeah, something like that. There's any number of words that you could use.
Sirrah.
In Spartacus, they kind of flipped around how they spoke. So instead of saying, "I want to speak to you," they would say, "I would have words." So they're kind of stating their intention to do something, and they're not using very many connectives. But again, like, that is not historically accurate because essentially anytime you watch I guess apart from something like Apocalypto, maybe, although I'm less familiar with the history of that, but that movie is not in English. Basically, every other time when you watch a historical film, you are watching the script communicate what the people would have said at the time into English. If it's an English language movie, which means already it's inaccurate. And then you can start getting into accents. The actors, do they put on an accent? Are they guessing as to what the accent was at the time? Because we just don't know. And there are multiple things you can do. You kind of have to take creative liberties with some of this stuff. As long as you're somewhat consistent with yourself, then I don't consider it to be a problem, regardless of how accurate it is, to be completely honest. So, like, if in the Odyssey, I agree that it would be very out of place if they were using, like, Zoomer lingo. But if the whole film was that, then there is an argument that could be made.
I think they are actually using all that language in the film.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, I guess. But yeah, if they do that, I think it'll be very funny.
Odysseus is in front of his men yelling, "Let's go."
Yeah, Dad bothered me. Daddy bothered me more. Because that is just so... it's like, we were saying earlier, like, accuracy sometimes is less important than whether or not it feels accurate. Which might be silly, but, if you need to read the writing on a plane, then the color of the plane is less important than you being able to read the thing.
Well, that's also like a good example with that would be guns. Like, guns don't sound like they do in movies. A silenced pistol in a movie is not what a silenced pistol sounds like. But filmmakers will always go for what feels right. And what feels right is based on however many years of audiences hearing silenced pistols in movies. That's obviously not what they sound like. And then every now and then you may get a movie that gets, like, the noises of guns correct. There's a movie called Blue Ruin, which has a scene involving a sniper. And I can't remember what the order is that you see it in, but it was specifically designed with the like audio to mimic what it would actually have been like if someone that far away was firing a sniper rifle at you. Which is not intuitive because I believe what it was is that you see the flash of the rifle, then you get the impact, and then you get the sound. I think that's what happens. So when you watch it, it kind of feels wrong, but it fit the tone of the movie for sure. But, doing that kind of thing in, like, a war movie or something where you've got, hundreds of rounds being shot every minute, I feel like that would risk being needlessly confusing.
There is one other thing, too, we have to discuss. And I'm almost upset to have to bring this up, but some of the casting decisions, like who's playing Cersei?
I don't know. I have mixed feelings on this because there are, again, random. I have to go back to you on this one, but I know that some of the casting in Spartacus was changed but for people
Yes.
that did an amazing job.
Yeah. And like I personally just don't care. I think that if you're well, to put it simply, if you're black and you're playing a historically white character, if you're a woman or a biological woman, I guess, playing a man, I don't care as long as you convincingly pull off the role. Which might be a hot take, but yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think it depends. Some things you can change, and it's not a big deal. Like, I wouldn't be bothered about Cersei because she's meant to be this weird witch living on an island, so she could be anything. But some of the other characters do bother me when they've changed them. Just because, like, these are foundational myths that are important to a lot of people. And if we imagine the situation reversed, if we were to, say, cast, I don't know, pick J random, not particularly great British actor.
I've got one for you.
Okay.
We'll do Henry Cavill as Shaka Zulu.
Wow. Okay. Well, Henry Cavill as Anansi from the African myths. You know, it's when you look at it that way round, I think you can understand why it's so jarring to people, and it's just a pity that racists latch onto these issues as well and use them as fodder, because there is a genuine argument there. You know, are we going to be respectful of culture and mythology and history and how that inevitably entangles itself with nation and ethnicity, or not? Are we going to have one rule, or are we going to treat people hypocritically in different ways? Like it really bothers me that the BBC, particularly in its educational programming, is recasting people from history as completely different ethnicities to what they were. I mean, we Brits have always been a mongrel race. Yeah, we're mixed up bits of everything, but it's just so jarring, and we know it's wrong. And this is supposed to be educational content.
Yeah,
so that really bothers me.
Yeah, that's the distinction that I would agree with. There is that if was it Doctor Who or was it something else where Isaac Newton was black? That's the one.
That was the one.
Yeah, he was Indian.
Yeah,
Indian.
Okay, so like that, I would treat it the same as the race swapping, if you want to call it that, in Spartacus. I just don't care. But if it's something that is meant to be educational, if it is some kind of documentary like the Cleopatra thing that we were talking about, then I think that it really does matter, because you are just straight up misrepresenting what happened and you're pretending that it's educational, which means you're just gaslighting people. If it is an episode of Doctor Who, I can't say that I take issue with that. I totally see why people would. I just don't.
Yeah, so Doctor Who is a bit of a weird one because it mixes science fiction, occasional fantasy elements, and history. And its original remit was in part to be educational programming as well as entertainment. When they travel to the past, and the past is rather peculiarly and anachronistically progressive, and there's nobody questions a modern companion with modern sensibilities swanning around the place doing stuff that would have been completely scandalous in that era, that bothers me. I formed this attitude towards history after playing a game called Spirit of the Century, which was one of the first Fate games that ever came out, because they were tapping into all of this great pulp fiction, but they completely erased all the downsides of that period in history. And I think you do the people of the past a disservice when you whitewash their suffering and their struggles out. I mean, you don't have to make it the center of a show, but you should tackle it. And there was a contradiction. So just let me finish up here. But there was a contradiction because, on the one hand, Doctor Who had them travelling back to London when the Thames was frozen and everything, and they had a little nod to the problem in the sort of minor villain of the piece was quite racist, but they kind of glossed over it everywhere else. And then on the other hand, they traveled back in time in America and got involved in the whole bus protest and everything, which was more blatant. So there's the double standard there. On the one hand, you're erasing people's struggles and difficulties in Victorian London when the poor were really poor and there was a lot of horrible racism and everything. And on the other hand, you're making it the entire focus of the story, and there's no consistency of approach, and I find that jarring.
Yeah, the number of game books, especially that I read, but sometimes other books, that start out with, we understand that indigenous peoples, suffered this terrible thing, and we've attempted to be, sympathetic towards that. And then the game or the book goes on to have a completely different history that does not in any way, shape, or form. Like, that just feels like virtue signaling.
It is.
We're gonna ignore history while at the same time profiting off it, kind of. So one of the ones I wanted to bring up is The Woman King, which I did not watch because I couldn't stand to, even for the sake of this. And it bothered me a lot. It was designed to entertain, but I knew so many people that watched that movie and came away thinking that it was it was actually based on a true story. And
I mean, it's based on a true story in the way that, Vlad Tepes was a real person, but I'm pretty sure he didn't turn into a vampire.
I got called lots of names, though, for saying, like, this person did not actually exist. They just made up this character. They're like, no, she's still, like, honored in Africa today. I'm like, no. Like, no. The writers did interviews. They said they made her up. Like, her name exists as a child in, like, one monk's documentation that is the closest that there is at all.
Actually, this is kind of funny, because a few years back, I had a colleague who is from the area that used to be the Kingdom of Dahomey. And I asked him about that, and he was loath to even talk about the Kingdom of Dahomey. He was like, no, we're not like that anymore. We're Christian now. We don't do that. So I find it surprising that people would take pride in the Kingdom of Dahomey after they find out, that it was one of the largest slave-owning nations in Africa, for one thing.
And I think the woman that she was kind of loosely based on only ever fought one battle and lost horribly or something. I'm trying to remember what people said at the time. But it was not exactly a glorious kingdom of enlightened people.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there were female warriors, but apparently they were all his, like, third line of wives that were, like, too ugly to fuck.
That's a good way to put it.
And because men were not allowed in the palace at night because they might try and bang the more beautiful wives, but he still needed bodyguards. They basically just turned these women into his bodyguards for the night shift. Was my understanding. But I kind of wonder where that draws the line in the whole, well, this is here for entertainment, but people didn't know that. Like,
that's probably the key. Like, I haven't seen the movie. At some point I might, just to kind of test myself, because based on what I've heard,
I couldn't do it.
Like, based on what I've heard, it's kind of like the Animal Farm thing, where it is almost so egregiously wrong that it's like an inverse of the actual history, or an inverse of what the Animal Farm book was. To where if you don't make that clear kind of within the work itself, then you are just lying to people. But if they made it clear at the beginning of the film or something that this was like a fanciful reinterpretation of history, like what if this character was a little bit different and then everything was, happily ever after, whatever. Kind of like the Inglourious Bastards treatment, right? Like that is grounded in history. It's obvious. I mean, it's essentially like a revenge fantasy, right? Like, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But
so was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Exactly, yeah. I don't like that one as much as Inglourious Bastards, but same deal. And if something like The Woman King presented itself in that manner, no doubt there would still be people that had a problem with it, but at least then you are contextualizing it as, this is not real, we're just having some fun.
It's just entertainment.
The following feature is complete bullshit.
Yeah. So I double-checked. Trailers and promotional materials specifically said it was based on powerful true events.
Yeah,
but the movie did not. But the movie did not have the little title card they usually do that says this was based on a true story.
Well, okay, I'm an 80s guy. Most of my films come from the 80s. I grew up in the 80s watching movies and everything else from the 80s. Obviously, Rambo, First Blood Part 2 is not real. I mean, okay, no one guy got taken into Vietnam to go and photograph Vietnamese or POWs American POWs in Vietnam, and then ends up rescuing them after destroying half the Vietnamese army and the Russian special forces on top of that. But that was dealing with semi-historical subject matter and the fact that, yeah, we fought the Vietnam War and we didn't exactly win that one, and we left POWs behind, and there were veterans who came out of that who were seriously, PTSD'd and messed up from it. But at no time during that show did we ever look at that and go, that really happened. That could really happen, dude. One badass could go into Vietnam and do all that. And yet they didn't try to sell the film on that either. It's not like they tried to, come out in the movie theater and say, this was based on some historical facts and evidence. There are still POWs in Vietnam. But the modern films are virtue signaling in such a way as to where they're trying to lead audiences into believing this shit's real, or it's 100% based on fact, or mostly based on fact, or at least so much of it is based on fact that you have to accept that parts of it are true when they aren't. And that's where I think this shit, it gets very disingenuous, because it's like, no, if they had just had a good time with, the Woman King and, done all the, crazy stuff and everything else. I mean, even pulling out rocket launchers and crazy shit, everybody would have been like, oh my God, this is a hoot. Let's love this. This is Hollywood back on cocaine. This is great.
Well, the other thing that bothered me about it was that, considering that they were, one of the largest slave dealers in Africa, to then make them
heroes
out to be heroes against slavery and, fighting for that just seems so insulting to the actual cultures that, that were their victims. Like,
can you imagine people coming unhinged if they made a Civil War movie and Robert E. Lee comes out and says, when this war is over, we shall free all of you, but for now we need to keep you enslaved to work our farms while we fight the northern aggression. I mean, people would shit their pants and be hauling weapons and stuff.
Question from the chat. Talking about fiction-inspired history, are you familiar with Hugo Pratt?
I am terrible with names, so let's ask Dr. Google.
Hugo Stieglitz, maybe?
Oh, right. Corto Maltese. He's an Italian comic book artist. So I know his work barely.
Enlighten the rest of us who are not.
Was an Italian comic artist. He did extensive historical research for many of his works, such as Corto Maltese, which is the only one I'm aware of, and then only vaguely, and I tried to read one in French and couldn't. So, yeah, I can't really tell you much more than that, but I can give you a British example of a well-researched historical comic. Charlie's War, which is set in World War One and runs pretty much right the way through it. It's very sort of kitchen sink drama, but in a trench. and follows a working class infantryman, Charlie, through World War One. But there's bits of it where he's back home as well, and from what I can tell, was extremely well researched. So yeah, it's weird for a boys' comic meant for young boys. It was quite unflinching in how it portrayed World War One.
Nice. I'll have to look it up.
I think that's one of the sad things is the fact that British films and television shows, even if they weren't like, they were playing fun with history and stuff, like Blackadder comes to mind specifically. But even when they were just playing with history, there still was an undercurrent of realism. I mean, even the Monty Python movies, as silly as they are, had an undercurrent of realism that kind of made them seem historical and believable to some extent, despite the fact that, there was cows and shit being thrown by trebuchets.
Well, they would fire dead animals from trebuchets.
They would.
Yeah.
See, that's real. It's just,
Yeah. And they made fun of people's ideas about history, like the whole peasants grubbing in the mud thing.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some lovely filth down here. That's making fun of people's attitude. Blackadder that you brought up is a good one because it works because it is situated in history, and then it subverts what we know, but it also plays into it. Mm-hmm. If you didn't have that, it would not work anything like as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of like the hallmarks of old British stuff, and then all of a sudden now it's just like, hey, guess what? We're just gonna change everything on a whim and a dime, and
yeah.
Fuck you if you don't like it, because if you post anything negative on social media, we'll throw you in the clink.
It's not quite that bad.
Has anybody besides me seen Peaky Blinders?
Oh yeah,
Peaky Blinders?
Yeah, love it.
Don't like the movie. I have not.
I got through the second season and I couldn't get any further than that.
Why?
Well, because in the first season, we were talking earlier about, modern attitudes. In the first season, the World War has just ended.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy comes home. His aunt has been running the company for years. And he makes a comment about he has stuff to discuss, but it's not women's business. And she said, well, the whole time you were gone, this place ran on women's business. What changed? And he said, he just shrugs and says, we came home. There is a scene where they go into a bar that is apparently an underground gay club, and they're both horrified. And then in the second season, all of a sudden, he's making speeches about how we are a progressive company and women have the right to speak their mind here. And his sister has a roommate who's a gay man. And when she tells him that, she tells Tommy that, and of course, it was illegal at that point. He gets very upset, and she says, "Oh, don't worry, Tommy's not going to care." And it was like from the first to the second season, there was this huge shift towards just being completely like doing away with any historical accuracy whatsoever. And the characters changed so much between the first and the second season that it was just really jarring. I'll probably go back and finish it. But I just am sort of curious. I was sort of curious as to people's thoughts on inserting that kind of stuff into shows. Because I mean, the roommate is very awkward. Like, there's no reason for the roommate to even be in the show. He basically shows up to like get outed as gay, and then you never see him again, as near as I can figure.
So he was basically used as a prop.
Yeah, and I'm just sort of wondering if, like, inserting that sort of, how people feel about inserting that sort of stuff into historical things that otherwise, people really enjoy.
Oh, I think I just said it. I mean, they basically used him like a prop and then threw him away. I mean, how disingenuous does that feel? It'd be like me trying to say, like, I represent all sorts of LGBTQ plus, stuff, and then, turn around and just like completely throw that out the window the first time, somebody says something gay on the show. So.
like I was saying about the sort of pulp era stuff, I feel it is hugely disrespectful to people and their struggles to just kind of erase them. If there had been a story arc from that position in the first season to another position, like if the gay cousin or whatever it was saves his life or proves himself in some way, and wins him over, that would be, an interesting story arc with character development. Remember that? That was the attitude of the male soldiers coming back to a large degree. Women were expected to leave the factories and go back to the kitchen. But of course, that led to a massive social upheaval because they weren't too happy about that. So,
Oh yeah, the first season made sense. It was this sudden change in the second season to like literally saying we are a progressive company and women's ideas are welcome here.
yeah, without an intervening storyline to bridge the gap. What probably happened was the series was more popular than they were expecting. And they felt they had to lose some of the historicity to keep it popular. But for me, even if we're not talking history, conflict and different ideas and warring beliefs is where you find story. And there's all this interesting historical stuff there that you can tap into. Like quite often the criminal classes were more accepting of women, but they had their own criminal enterprises that they got involved in. In Victorian times, there were organized gangs of women shoplifting, much as you see on the news today. And quite often it was a little bit more accepting of homosexuality, but not really. But because it was criminal and had to be underground and all of that, there was a certain amount of commonality there. It was only really acceptable in some fragments of the lower classes, and in the upper classes, so long as you could pretend it wasn't going on, it was fine. But there's stories there.
Yeah, the thing I found upsetting about it was less the fact that it existed than the fact that the change didn't make any sense, and the fact that some of the best parts of the first season are Tommy butting head with his aunt because she knows stuff that's going on and he won't listen to her. And then all of a sudden that was just kind of gone because now, women's ideas are accepted here. So all of that conflict just kind of disappeared. I mean, there were other conflicts because, it's a show about criminals, but I thought they were much more two-dimensional black and white conflicts than, kind of the family drama that was interesting. Have more people seen Spartacus than just Random and I?
I saw the original series. You talking about I've seen the movie, obviously. I've seen several movies of Spartacus.
I was talking the television show. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Yeah, and then I saw the Skinamax show, which was fun. I have not seen the latest one with the black female warrior who apparently is ungodly, unbelievable, and can hold her own against full-grown armored men, but, such is the way of
Well, this Hollywood. Is part of what I was going to discuss. I have not seen that one either, but Random suffered through it for us.
I made a lot of videos on that one, yeah. Go for it. What did you want to move into on that topic?
Well, I was going to ask, do you think there has been a change in opinion over that type of stuff? Because I remember seeing a comment on the video where someone said they hated House of Asher because there was too much gay stuff in it. And your comment was, wait a minute, did you see the original one?
Yeah.
If that's your problem with it.
Yeah, I think in the case of House of Asher, there is a lot to criticize, but there were a lot of people being disingenuous. I saw this in my comments and I saw this on Twitter. People not necessarily lying, but quite possibly lying. They were either ignorant or they were just straight up lying about what was in the show, exaggerating it to try and, get cheap points in against it or whatever. And a lot of the criticisms that were leveled at it, so race swaps, we had that in the original show. Gay stuff, we had that in the original show. Girl boss, we had that in the original show. In almost all cases, the original show handled that very, very well. The difference is that people are reading into the intentions of the creator, which I personally don't care about. If Stephen DeKnight has had some kind of, let's be as extreme as possible, let's say that he's had a political epiphany and he's now dedicated his life to opposing the Republicans and owning the Chuds or whatever. If that led to him making a really good TV show, then I don't fucking care. But it didn't. And that's why people are angry.
True.
Yeah,
I don't remember there being a girl boss in the first one, though.
People would argue that Navia and Saxa are both girl bosses. I would dispute Navia. Saxa, I could see the argument.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I don't know. She was just so overshadowed because there were so many other really badass guys. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, I mean, because I've gone through it in like stupid detail, there's a very brief sequence in Vengeance where Saxa is heavily implied to be on par with her male counterparts. Not the gladiators, but the other Germans who are not trained gladiators, but they're slaves. You know, the guy's got like 30 kilos on her, and it's implied that they're of equal fighting ability, which I just don't buy it. But she's such a minor role, and the show is so exaggerated that I don't really care. Whereas I can't make the same defense of House of Asher because House of Asher is very much focused on that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounded like the very beginning of House of Asher started to, like, she got her ass kicked repeatedly, and
oh yeah,
the only reason Asher picked her up in the first place was because he wanted a spectacle.
Yeah, so that was something that I actually, I'm not going to say I liked it, but it surprised me because you see the trailers and it's kind of what's happening with the Odyssey, which is largely why I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt until the film comes out. Is there was a massive negative reaction to the trailer. And the trailer made it very clear that this was going to be a story about an ahistorical black female badass beating up men. Or I don't even know if she fights a man in the trailer, but you can assume that the Gladiator show she's going to be fighting men. The way that they introduced her into the story, I thought was actually quite good. I thought it made sense on a character level because episode 1 sets up Asher as he wants to get his foot in the door as being this Lannister, and no one's letting him because they don't like him because he's an outsider. He's not Roman. So he's like, damn, I need to find something truly amazing to, blow everyone's heads off. So he goes to, buy some gladiators. He doesn't find anything. And then Achillea, her real name isn't Achillea, but Neferet is her real name. She starts to try and escape from the Romans, and she gets the shit kicked out of her. And Asher kind of takes an interest in her, being like, oh, okay, she has some balls. And he saves her from being executed right there because, she's either going to get severely beaten or straight up executed. And he buys her and is like, yeah, we're doing this. And every other character around him, his doctore is like, you are insane. You can't do this. You can't put a woman in the arena. And he's like, no, I know. That's the point. That's why I'm doing it. And I thought that was all good. By the time you get to episode 4, she has received multiple things that she has not earned. She's been branded with the mark of the Brotherhood, which she did not earn. And, Asher, more than anyone, would understand what that means. And then in episode 4, she suddenly starts winning fights again in a 1v3 against 3 trained male gladiators. Episodes 1 to 3 didn't do that. They had her losing, 1-to-1, which makes sense. Because firstly, they're men. Secondly, they're gladiators. And thirdly, the Spartacus show hypes the fuck out of gladiators and puts them as a gladiator is worth 10 regular men. So there is no way that this woman who might know how to fight should ever be able to take on 3 gladiators at once. No. And in episode 4, that's exactly what happens. If they had built it up, because historically, there is some basis for this in history, women fighting in the arena. But they fought other women, which makes sense. Why would you not do that? And they could have absolutely done that in the show. And that was something that I thought was just really disappointing, is that they didn't go down that line. Asher could have bought multiple women, trained them, and used that as his way to get in, because, then they could put on a show. And it would be something that the people have never seen before. But Stephen DeKnight didn't want to do that. He wanted to train this character, basically speed run this character to being not only as good as, but better than the men who have been there for years. And because the show was about that, that was a large part of why it just did not work. But even if you ignore that, there are so many other problems with that show. It's unreal.
Oh, also, there's another historical show out there I just spotted because I was checking out, House of Asher, and on the same channel there's Amadeus, which is a Starz original series, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart from Germany is about as Asian as it possibly could be.
I've not heard of that one.
Well, he was a prodigy.
He was a prodigy, so what they do? Bring him over from China?
Tiger Mom.
Yeah.
With Spartacus, there's another historical thread which I think makes the kind of gay panic around it quite funny, really. Because if you go back to 50s through 60s, you had a rich vein of sword and sandals movies, which had a heavy subtext of sexuality and homoeroticism to them. So they were very popular with the gay community. And they also kind of rode right on that edge of what was publicly acceptable at the time.
Grim, let me jump in on this real quick, because as you mentioned that, there was actually in the Stanley Kubrick version of Spartacus, there was a scene that was originally omitted about snails and oysters is actually what it's called, and it was put back into the film, and it was about exactly what you think it was.
But yeah, my point is that these films were a haven for the gay community at the time and sort of the fandom, whatever you want to call around it. And I think the modern Spartacus is very aware of its background. It's just all the sexual subtext is now very much text, including the homoeroticism. And so that's another historical thread. It's like these kinds of films were associated with these communities. So when Spartacus comes to make it, I think they're making a fairly heavy nod back to those films of the 50s and 60s, many of whose actors were homosexual as well. So that's you've got several historical threads coming together in something like Spartacus. Now everyone's thinking about oiled men.
Jimmy,
do you like films about gladiators?
I think what I was trying to get at was, do the people who yell about historical accuracy the loudest, is there a certain amount of hypocrisy in what type of historical accuracy they want to see?
Well, I'll give you the best example that I know of, and this has been something for years and years. Who remembers a little film starring Mel Gibson as William Wallace that was very, very popular at the time? Braveheart. That film was called the film that historians hate and love at the same time, and that is because there's so much shit in that movie that is absolutely 100% totally fucking wrong. And yet, the movie itself is so good and so, inspiring and, just jump on the balls of your feet and scream at the screen awesome that...
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And they tried to sell that off as a true story too, and I'm just kind of like, pretty sure the Scottish people would have some problems with a lot of this, but nobody really did because it was such a great movie that you could manage to overlook all the historical, things that were incorrect. But I mean, it's like Random was saying, it's like, if you have a show or a film that is so awesome that you can overlook those things, nobody says anything bad about it. But if you have a show that is a piece of shit to begin with, and people will obviously nitpick all of the shit that's bad in it, including all the historical inaccuracy. And in this case, we are so used to a steady stream of shit coming out of Hollywood that, honestly, even people who like Christopher Nolan would look at this film and kind of go, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah. We're all sick of being the last person in the Human Centipede.
Yes.
I think taste is subjective, right? You're more likely to be forgiving if you enjoy a film in spite of its various other issues, if it's got other things going for it.
Yeah.
And everyone has different things that piss them off to different degrees. I know about English history. I particularly know about Christian European history, so some of those older fantasy films bug me a lot, and anything that messes about with British history bugs me a lot. But I have gaps in my knowledge about other things, so they're not necessarily going to piss me off until I find out that they're horribly ahistorical from someone. Then I'm going to feel lied to. But yeah, everyone's got different sensitivities, different tastes, enjoys different things, and depending how much you enjoy a film will determine how forgiving you're feeling that you want to be. So yeah, a lot of it comes down to subjectivity.
Yeah, I mean, it's more a lore thing, but there have been a lot of complaints about the casting of Snape for the new Harry Potter
Oh boy.
television show. But nobody, because of the color of his skin, but nobody complained about the fact that his depiction in the movie was like 25 years too old, which also made a huge change to the story.
Well, when you have Alan Rickman as your actor, you could kind of get away with murder, Mr.
Dark magic ages you horribly.
Yes.
But it did change the story quite a lot, and I think that's kind of what Grimm was saying, that people enjoyed him. I think the problem is everyone's assuming they're not going to enjoy
Papa SEODDO.
It's a bit on the nose to have the instructor in the dark arts being black. I wince every time I think of that.
I kind of feel like they whoever made that casting decision, I just think has absolutely no self-awareness, because maybe it is truly colorblind casting. Like maybe that's the case and they've just accidentally race swapped the worst possible character that they could have race swapped in Harry Potter. I think more people are probably pissed off with this than had they race swapped Harry Potter, to be completely honest. Because
I can answer this.
Well, they're mad about the fact that he still doesn't have green eyes. So if they're going to worry about that, they probably would have been mad about it. But I think everyone expected Hermione to be race swapped, and
yeah, or Ron's family, because they're gingers and traditionally they get race swapped. So I think a lot less people give a shit about Harry Potter anymore. So it's probably going to get a bit of a pass.
Could you put that comment back up? I can jump on that.
This one?
Yeah, that one. So it says, did you ever found yourself having to explain to yourself why Gladiator's prologue pisses you off to no end due to Commodus murdering Marcus Aurelius? Yeah. Yeah, not only is that historically inaccurate, but even the way Commodus dies is historically inaccurate, because he didn't die in the damn ring with a gladiator. He was actually murdered in a bath by an athlete and another guy.
Yeah, that was kind of why I was asking, about Gladiator specifically. They use historical names, but otherwise those events are just not
100%.
Not.
Yeah.
We mentioned Inglourious Bastards earlier, and that worked because you absolutely were not expecting Hitler to get gunned down. Spoilers, sorry.
Yeah.
Because that didn't happen in history. So you thought,
After about 5 years, I think spoilers, so the spoiler warning can go away.
How's Hitler going to get out of this one? And he doesn't, So that worked. That screwing with history in that instance worked quite well.
Yeah, and he did it again in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where they killed the Manson family.
It wasn't as effective.
It was funny.
It was very funny, yeah, but I don't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's the only Tarantino film I don't like, and it's the only one I've only seen once. Because
I'm a big fan of Hateful Eight. But
Hateful Eight is enjoyable. I like it. It has some issues, but I like it a lot. The problem that I had with the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or really with the film as a whole, is it seemed like the film was designed to be like, I bet you didn't see that coming right at the end. But the ending didn't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie. Whereas in Inglourious Bastards, it's a film about this, squad of Jewish American soldiers trying to kill Hitler. And then the subversion is that they succeed. But then that's not the end of the film, because Hitler is not the antagonist of that movie. It's Hans Lander. So it's an ahistorical thing that happens within a broader context that's kind of about their mission to do this. And it's like, well, what if it happened? Like, it leads to a good story. Whereas Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a completely unrelated story about an actor trying to relive the glory days, and then at the end he kills some hippies. Like it didn't have anywhere near the same impact, even though the scene was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was completely unrelated to the rest of the movie.
I think I understand what he was trying to do, but I don't think he stuck the landing. I think he was identifying, the Manson murders as, the end of innocence in Hollywood and a sort of sea change in American culture and so on at that time. You got the Manson murders, the moon landing stuff, all kind of happening around the same time, and Summer of Love as well. All of that stuff goes on at roughly the same time. So he was identifying that as a moment, and then thinking, what if the Manson family was stopped and didn't manage to do anything? But then he didn't have enough on the end of the film to talk about how things would change. Whereas in Inglourious Bastards, you kind of got an idea of how things would be different, and you got a satisfying conclusion to it with the actual villain, as you say. But that it wasn't tied up in a neat bow at the end of Once Upon a Time.
So, looking at historical changes like that, I don't. Okay, House of Asher probably is early enough that it requires spoiler warnings, just in case anybody actually is planning on watching it. So, Random, there are differences in the two different timelines provided as to things that happened with Julius Caesar.
Yes.
Why does one work and one doesn't?
Because one of them is plausible, the other one is fucking insane.
It is an alternate timeline, though, and if we're just talking like fantasy and magic, what does it matter?
It is an alternate timeline. The problem is that I don't believe that the events that lead to that would ever happen. And the show doesn't do enough to explain why that would happen, and they use it as a cheap, like, oh my god, look, this just happened. I'll just say what it is, so that way we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've already given the spoiler warning, so feel free to compare and contrast.
So House of Asher takes place in an alternate timeline where Asher didn't die, because he dies in the original show, and they literally are like, we're multiversing this shit, Asher's alive, let's go. Julius Caesar appears a few times. He is played by a different actor, and his personality has been transplanted with someone else, because he's not the same character that we had in the original show. He absolutely hates Asher, and he does everything he can to get in his way. And at the very end of the final episode, Asher has had enough, because Asher has pulled off this master play, and then Caesar is just kind of like, lol, no, that's not happening. So Asher gets very angry, and he suplexes him and then stabs him in the face. Julius Caesar gets killed by Asher at the end of House of Asher. That's obviously not anything close to what happened to the historical figure, but like if you're going to change something about the history, you need to have some kind of reason to do it, which in this case was shock humor. Or not even shock humor, because the suplex wasn't meant to be funny. It was just meant to be shocking. Whereas in the original show, Julius Caesar is heavily involved in the show's final season, War of the Damned. He basically goes on like an undercover mission to try and subvert the rebels working on behalf of Marcus Crassus. And the reason why that works is, one, the character is really, really well written, and two, it's somewhat plausible that something like that could have happened, because they tighten it up with the script to make it plausible that that could have happened and we didn't know, because it was a secret undercover mission, and there's no reason, given how the show ends, why Caesar or Crassus would ever tell anyone about it. So, yeah, because Julius Caesar was alive during the time. He obviously was close with Crassus after the events of Spartacus. And there is not, my understanding is that there is not much in the way of like solid historical groundwork for like where he was and what he was doing during the Third Servile War. So the writers were like, well, that gives us an excuse to use Julius Caesar, and we're not going to turn it down. And they could have easily like bungled it, as they did in House of Asher, but in the original show, Caesar is one of the best characters, even though it's not historically accurate.
I mean, yeah, the Spartacus uprising was 73 to 71 BCE, so it's about 27 years before the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE. Yeah, that's
and
true.
the show ends, or this. Well, no, I'm not gonna just straight up say how it ends, but there is an implication that they are going to continue the story, and leading into the allegiance between Crassus and Caesar and Pompey, which is, I think, largely why so many people, including myself, were confused when they were like, by the way, we're not doing that now. We're doing House of Asher. Like, why?
Oddly enough.
Just quickly, had Caesar and Crassus not been a factor in House of Asher, I would have been like, okay, fine. You didn't want to tell that story. You weren't interested for whatever reason, and you wanted to do something different. Caesar is crucial to the plot of House of Asher, and so is Crassus, even though he doesn't show up. So this is set after the Third Servile War, in a what-if scenario if Asher had been the one to win the war, basically. So it is a continuation of the story of Crassus and Caesar, and this is what they do with it. It's insane.
Well, and based on what we see in the earlier, in the quote-unquote real timeline, does Caesar really have any reason to hate Asher the way he does? Like, that seemed, again, haven't seen House of Asher, but that also seemed like kind of a random, well, we need an antagonist, so
I could see
let's make it Julius Caesar because everyone knows his name.
I think it's plausible that he would not like Asher because Asher is a swindly little bastard. He's very obviously trying to unsubtly climb the hierarchy ladder. Caesar places in the original show, Caesar places like a huge amount of value in Roman lives. Asher is not Roman, he's Syrian. Asher also came from the house of Batiatus, which is where Spartacus came from, and that caused all of this. So I can totally see Caesar just viewing Asher as a slave who's getting a bit too uppity, and he wouldn't like him. I don't think that's a problem, but the writing and the performance from the new Caesar is just so one-dimensional cartoon villain evil. he is just evil, like through and through. Which
I'm evil.
Was
just because.
that was. Yeah, and like that was never the case in the original show. There were layers and there were degrees of subtlety. He did some really horrible stuff in the original show, but you always had a sense that he was doing bad things for the right reasons and that there was a human being underneath all of that. Never get that in House of Asher.
Yeah, he becomes kind of a cartoon.
There is another historical show that was released about Rome that also used a lot of Roman history, but it was extremely good. It was extremely well received, but it only ran 2 seasons for whatever reason, and I'm sad about that because the original HBO Rome 2-season series was insanely good. I mean, you learned more about Roman everyday life, culture, and history, and then you still had some of the great characters like Caesar, Pompey, and Cleopatra, and all these other characters that were still wound up in mostly fictional circumstances, but still it was plausibly believable and enjoyable. I mean, that's how you do a good history show, in my opinion. I mean, it's perfect because you're not only being educated while you watch it, but you can get into the characters and their motivations, and sometimes it almost seems plausible because, you know, the old rumor was that Augustus was Caesar's rent boy, so to speak, and they kind of show you in the show why that's, you know, how that came about, and it just so happens that's not the relationship the two have with each other. It's a mistake that was played upon by Augustus's mother. But there's other fun stuff in the show. I mean, like how Caesar's child with Cleopatra was secretly one of the leading characters' child. Things like that. I mean, it's just like, it was just a fun show to watch. You had some of the top actors in in British television and British film at the time. You had really great production values, and you had some really good historical authenticity, even down to what people were eating at the time, like dormouse. Grim might have eaten dormouse. I don't know.
I have not eaten dormouse, no.
Oh, but you know it was served in England.
Yes.
And apparently in Rome.
Yes. When you said 2 seasons, I thought you meant up Pompeii, not Rome, but never mind.
You did see Rome, didn't you?
I did not.
Oh my God! See, that's one of the best shows. That's one of the best historical shows that nobody talks about anymore.
I feel like I have to mention I, Claudius, just so we can, insert Patrick Stewart with hair.
I Clavdivs.
Yeah, Zogran, true bread for true Romans. Yeah, there are a lot of aspects of that are kind of still true to this day. But man, it was one of the best shows ever. And yeah, Roman of the Empire, one of the best shows ever produced. I agree, 100%.
I also feel like there are periods in history that become kind of like faddish, and people care much more. People with access to Google become, instantaneous cram historians on certain periods of time. Rome has been a lot of it.
Anything Viking.
I was going to say the Viking thing, I think is slightly more recent, but has, gotten really huge. And I feel like those time periods, I think there are certain periods in Japan that people...
The samurai, yeah, the Sengoku period, that's about to become a real big thing, because the first Shogun, and I didn't know there wasn't going to be another season, but the first season of Shogun hit, and it was a major hit, and it was a lot of historical authenticity and accuracy. And the second one is about to drop, and that is another case of fictional characters in realistic historical circumstances. All the names have been changed, like Lord Toranaga and all this other stuff. Those are stand-in names for actual people, throughout history. But
I picked the right time to release the Sengoku era game then. So.
You did. You absolutely did. You need to drop it though right about the time when the Shogun season 2 is starting.
When's it starting?
I'll find out for you.
Okay.
But I mean, like, if somebody decided they wanted to do a movie or a television show about, I don't know, what's a place nobody cares about?
Sri Lanka.
But like, ancient history of someplace that is not, a common fad. Do we think anybody would really care much about how accurate it was?
Like generic cavemen type thing?
I mean, India only seems to be interesting to Indians, and then God knows with what they do with their films.
Which is a shame, because their mythology is absolutely crazy.
It is.
And some of those Indian dramas based on that mythology are great. So.
It's just hard to believe though that some of these guys will just break out into song, just drop them.
Well, what I was kind of wondering is that the I hate this term, but the normie fascination of Vikings started with the television show Vikings, and then everybody started really getting into, first faux Vikings, and then you had a certain percentage that branched off, and they were the audience for things like the Northman.
Mm-hmm.
The normies really liked Gladiator and 300, and then you get a certain percentage that branch off and get really fascinated with the actual history. RRR came out and was kind of generally popular. If you had a bunch more of those, would there be most of the people who didn't care? It's just entertaining, but then you get a bunch of people who get really like obsessed with, Indian history over a period of time. Because one of the reasons I've always wondered is like, if we want more Asian actors, more Black actors, like there are some really fascinating people in African history, as an example, and yet there don't seem to be a whole lot of historical things on them because the idea is somehow, I don't know, they wouldn't get enough attention or something.
Specific audience.
Well, I mean, except the Woman King did quite well, despite, the fact that African Americans who knew history like tried to boycott it. It still ended up doing quite well again with kind of a normie audience.
That shows you the power of trailers and advertising, though, right? Because what I don't even know what the name of the character is in The Woman King. Like, oh, she was fictional, right? But the kingdom existed. Is that correct?
Yes, but the movie has them fighting slavery, and in fact, they were the
Sure.
biggest slavers. So
Yeah. So
it's about
my
as
guess,
inaccurate a portrayal as is possible.
sure. So my guess is that the vast majority of people who saw that movie in the cinema, which leading to its big box office numbers, will not have known what the Kingdom of Dahomey was beforehand. I had never heard of it until the trailer for that movie came out. But yeah, if you advertise it correctly, especially something like that, it's going to have some controversy attached to it, inevitably, as a result of the decisions that they made in the story that they wanted to tell. As for why, like, other movies, maybe similar to that, about like real African historical figures don't exist, there's got to be a demand for them to be seen. And that kind of begins with them being somewhat well known. Like, for example, I could totally see there being a Nelson Mandela movie because he's like a household name. Or The Last King of Scotland, the one about Idi Amin, like that was, excellent movie. But the Woman King, from the sounds of it, they just kind of invented their own thing, advertised it as history, and then people went to watch it because it looked like something that they wanted to see. Like, that's why it made money. I don't think it had anything to do with it being quote unquote historical.
Right. What I was saying was, do you have to have a bunch of movies like that in order to get people interested in the actual history? Do you have to have a Braveheart before you can have people interested in Scottish history? Do you have to have a 300 or a Gladiator before you can get people interested in Roman history? Do you have to have Vikings before you can get people interested in the Northman?
See, when you talk about, I'm thinking about Korea. Nobody used to really give much of a shit about Korea, except as how it related to Japan, because they did all their animation there. But the fascination with K-pop and all things Korean now does seem to have bled over into some interest in the history, which is a good thing, because Korea has some really interesting history to it, like the Imjin War with the Japanese, things like that. And there's that zombie series Kingdom, which is set historically,
Korea.
which has been received really well. So I don't think it's just films. I think people just get fascinated with other cultures, and then that, for some people, that naturally progresses to a broader interest. But I don't think it has to be films or documentaries or whatever else. We enjoy learning about other people's stories. Indonesia's got fascinating periods of history as well. Vietnam. There's a lot of it about.
The reason I was wondering about films is that there was, I'm trying to remember his name. There was a guy from Africa who made a video game that was entirely based in kind of old African myths, and as kind of a tribute to his dad, I think, who'd passed away. And it bombed, and people taunted him horrendously. And I don't know why. And I can't remember the name of the game, which really bothers me. So it does seem like certain types of media are more likely to get people. Oh, hey, Proctophile's got it for us.
Okay.
It seems like certain types of media get people interested more easily. I mean, certain types of video games are kind of niche anyway, so it's hard to.
I think it's going to largely come down to just cool factor, honestly, because I'm just thinking like God of War. Like, God of War is awesome. And, if you play that at I never played the originals, but like the Norse ones in particular, if I had been playing those when I was, if I had been 15 years old when those games came out, then I probably would have become obsessed with Norse mythology, just because it's cool as hell what how they are used in that game. And then you end up looking at other things, kind of like what happened with me with Spartacus. You look into it enough to where you become aware of certain divergences from history, and then you learn a bit more about like what the truth behind the history, I guess. Like, I guess I would call that kind of superficial interest, which is where my interest in history kind of ends. Like, I'm not really a history buff at all, although some of my favorite stories are based on historical stories. But yeah, the truth behind the history, I think, it relies largely on cool factor.
I mean, I remember when 300 was made, one of the things, I can't remember if this was the movie or the comic, but I remember that there were comments made about, yeah, this is totally ridiculous, but the hope is it'll be interesting enough to people that they'll then go look up the actual history.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, I think I may have actually been 15 when that movie came out. Yeah, I personally didn't suddenly become obsessed with like Greek mythology, but or Greek history. But yeah, I could totally see that people would do that. And if nothing else, things like that, even if they're completely ahistorical, it's a comic book movie essentially, they are putting the character names and the broad brushstrokes of history in the public sphere, really. And then it becomes a topic of discussion. It can become a topic of interest, especially now with the internet and social media being what it is, and YouTube, which wasn't really a thing back then. That kind of thing can lead to so many different like offshoots of interest and actually getting into the historical videos.
The Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd say it's something like Armageddon. It's not a historical movie, obviously, but it's kind of the equivalent of, it was either Braveheart or Gladiator we were talking about earlier. Like, it's the one that just pisses off scientists because apparently they use it at NASA to be like, try and catch every single error because you won't be able to. There's hundreds. But if you like, Armageddon is an enjoyable movie. You stick it on and you're like, it's cool. They're going to go to space and blow up the thing with a thing. Like, yeah, it's cool. And you get to see the rockets and the astronauts and the training. And like, yeah, none of it's accurate, but it's still cool as hell to watch. And if you like spaceships, then you'll probably enjoy it. And I could see that getting someone interested in, actual like NASA processes and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the original CSI, apparently scientists hated it because they were like, yeah, that never happens. We don't carry guns. We can't get fingerprints overnight. But then there was this flood of people who wanted to join crime scene investigation. And before that, they had been horrifically underfunded and understaffed because nobody wanted the job. And suddenly everybody wanted the job, and money like came flooding into departments. So, I mean, there can definitely be benefits to even completely inaccurate.
Well,
completely inaccurate lines.
This is something that I said not so long ago. Somebody put up a post on X about how Christopher Tolkien hated the movies and said that they were a disservice to his father's memory and all this, that, and the other. And I vehemently disagreed with him. I mean, yes, he's dead, so he never heard my argument. But if he were alive, he would hear this argument, which is those movies, no matter what you thought of it, pulled more interest back into that world and that series than any book that you could have published, whether it be the Book of Lost Tales or whatever, because it basically resurrected Tolkien's work as something to be looked at, and people actually started reading the books after the movies were over with and getting into it. And, in that sense, I think the movies were a massive success, far beyond anything that he would be poo-pooing about. And I think even Tolkien would have to say, well, okay, they brought the bucks back in, so okay, I can't bitch too much. But I don't know. What do you think, Grim? You're more of a Tolkien guy than I am.
I would have said that that's largely true, but you've got the Rings of Power factor. I think like throwing that in, I think, is an important distinction because, there are going to be some people who have who have watched Rings of Power and have then been like, yeah, this is cool, I'll go and read Tolkien. But that cannot possibly be comparable to what happened with the Peter Jackson movies, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's also a line as to like how inaccurate is inaccurate. Like I can totally understand why Christopher Tolkien was not happy with the Peter Jackson movies. I get it. Like I disagree with him, but I understand it. But something like Rings of Power, like I don't know what, if he didn't like the Peter Jackson movies, what on earth would he have thought of Rings of Power?
Oh, he would have thought they were utter dog shit, which they are.
And The Hobbit wasn't great either. That should not have been 3 films.
It was great for 3 films. Come on now. No. I mean, yes, they added a bunch of shit that wasn't in the books, but still, it was great. I loved it. I mean, it's kind of like you're bitching about, it's like, oh, my steak is just too juicy. Oh no.
No.
Hard disagree.
Yeah, this is where I reveal that I have about 13 hours of videos on my channel going over The Hobbit in nauseating detail.
I'm sorry, I liked it. But...
Yeah,
you are the only person I've ever spoken to.
Well, I will go to bat for the M4 book edit, which is an edit that someone did, which strips them down to a 4-hour cut. That is really quite good because it removes 51% of the movie.
It was nice to revisit the world and to all the sets and everything, and the costuming and everything was lovely. But just no, as a film, no. Set of films.
The acting
so I guess
was good too.
I guess to summarize, like accuracy, good, depending on how accurate you're trying to make your historical thing.
Well, I do have a
feeling like the period is good is also important.
I do have kind of a modern equivalent that actually my channel is really kind of rolled into now, because I've pretty much given up on Twig as a format right now. Mainly because my side hobby of Fist of the North Star has pretty much taken over my channel. I mean, that's what's getting all the views right now. So I've steered very heavily into that. But there is a brand new anime that just released last month, and it's awesome. It is perfect. It is absolutely perfect to the manga. And in the parts where it's not perfect, it's because they've added in additional things which do not detract from the story, but rather enhance it. And here's the thing. No matter how many people I tell that it is a perfect adaptation, their biggest complaint is, I don't like the CG. And instead what they prefer is the old 1984 version where they changed whole storylines, added entire characters that were not in the original manga along with their plot lines, and made up a whole bunch of extra crap that didn't actually fit the manga. But they love that one because of the animation differences. I mean, I'm talking about like, really? You like this old music better than the new stuff? And the voice acting on the new stuff is really, really good? But you still want to go back to the old 84 stuff because that's what you grew up with, and because it was cel-shaded animation, and you don't like CG? That's your gatekeep right there, is you've gatekept yourself out of watching this really good adaptation that is manga perfect? And it's the same thing with kind of these historical shows. You make something that would be 100% historically accurate and perfect. And I've said it before, real history is way more interesting than Hollywood history at times. But even if you did make a 100% historically accurate film, you would probably still have people bitching about it. They'd find something to poke a hole in about it. Like, oh, you did a historically accurate version of the Battle of Falkirk. Oh, well, you know what? It doesn't hold up to the Braveheart Battle of Falkirk. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, Armageddon was more popular than Deep Impact, despite the fact that Deep Impact was probably more accurate. So,
Deep Impact was boring as shit, though.
I liked it a lot more.
I like them both in different ways, and I have to be in different moods to watch them.
No Proctophile, not Dragon Ball. Fist of the North Star.
I I don't know. I think that as much as people yell about the need for accuracy, what they really want, and I said this earlier, what they really want is accuracy where they want it accurate.
Mm.
You know, they want an accurate Spartacus, but without all the gag and
Well,
without the orgies.
yeah, I mean, look at the Dune, the current Dune remakes. I mean, it's like, you know, 2 shows of what, 3 hours a piece or 2.5 hours each, and they managed to tell a worse story than the 3-hour version that was released back in what, 84, 85 by Lynch. Yeah, I'm sorry, but man, the Lynch one, for all of its mistakes, is still way better done 100% than anything that Denis Villeneuve made. That soulless shit.
Hard disagree, but I like both.
I am very entertained how much of this has gone from like historical accuracy to lore accuracy.
But that's kind of what it is, though. I mean, that's when you look at it. I mean, that's what historical accuracy is. It's lore accuracy. I mean, it's like, can you imagine all the people who would absolutely lose their shit if they made a Warhammer 40,000 movie and then they bring out the Space Marines and there's a detail that's wrong with the Space Marines? It doesn't matter how big or how small. It's like, they weren't using the Corvus-style helms at that point. They were using these other style helms at that point.
Well,
shit.
I was actually going to say, I think in a lot of ways people care more about lore accuracy than they do historical accuracy.
I mean, don't they, though?
Well, you can be sure most of the time about lore accuracy, and you can't necessarily be sure about a lot of history because it gets lost.
Fair.
Yeah, like in the case of, to use the Warhammer example, I think that people who are already fans of Warhammer and who know enough about it to know that the helmet is wrong or whatever, like they're going to notice and they're going to be like, oh, come on, you can't even get that detail right. Like, who made this?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else is not going to care unless the story is, if the show is bad, then they'll do some digging and they'll find out, oh, damn, they couldn't even get the helmet right. Whereas that was the starting point for people who were already fans. Yeah. So I don't know, for something like that, I'd kind of consider it to be icing on the cake as far as the overall thing goes. But as a fan of Warhammer, if I noticed a detail where I was like, that's completely wrong, even if it was like a superficial detail where, like, I don't know, the Ultramarines were red instead of blue, I'd just be like, how on earth did this happen?
Well, I had an ex-girlfriend who, when the Hobbit movies were coming out, they were just about to release, and they were showing the designs of all the dwarves, and she was bitching up and down and right and left about it, and she was like, in the book it says they're supposed to be wearing different hats and sashes of all these different colors. I said, babe, visually, that isn't going to make a bit of difference. Nobody's going to notice one guy's color of hat from another. Some people are even colorblind. I said, but if you give all of them very distinct visual appearances, including the starhead look that everybody criticized, you're going to know this one is Beaufort, this one is Bomber, this one is, Owen, and this one is Glowin, etc., etc. I mean, it's like, you could much more...
guarantee you most people don't.
Actually, I guarantee you most people did. If you had shown them all in like different caps and shit like that, and with colors, it's like, okay, now you've got a bunch of color shifting hats as your...
If we learned anything from Michael Bay's Transformers, it's that you need visual differentiation between your characters.
You do.
Yeah, like I would agree pretty much with that, is that something that the Hobbit movies did get right is that the 13 dwarves were, the 12, it was 13 dwarves because it was with Thorin plus Bilbo was the 14th member. Is that?
Yep.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. So Peter Jackson was terrified of having that many dwarves because obviously with the Fellowship there's only 9 and they're not all dwarves. Whereas here you've got to have essentially 13 Gimlis. Like, how is that going to work? They did make them visually distinctive to where you can tell which one is which, broadly speaking. I have criticisms of their designs, but
fair.
They made their silhouettes, different enough to where you can tell who you're looking at a glance, which is very important. What they didn't do is any kind of characterization for them beyond about 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I think that it would obviously be inaccurate if they had done this, but I think the film would have been improved if they had cut the dwarves down to 6 dwarves instead of 13.
Ooh, no, people would have been bitching up and down, left, right, and center.
People would have.
They would have rioted.
Violence.
They would have flipped their shit. But like in the book, it's been ages since I read the book. I was a child when I read it, but you don't need there to be 13 dwarves because they don't all have individual roles. It's just that they're all there. And like in the original script for the film, only, I believe it's 6 or 7 of the dwarves are actually mentioned with dialogue. And then in the finished version of the film, they kind of distributed that dialogue to some of the extra dwarves when they needed them to, when they realized, oh shit, that guy hasn't spoken for 3 hours, then we'll give him a line kind of thing, which means that the background dwarves all have the same personality.
A little bit, but I don't know. I mean, I thought there was some different. I mean, well, okay. Beaufort was obviously the one that was really a character just because of how the actor portrayed him. And
yeah, he had 2 of the best scenes. Probably the only scene that I like in the Battle of the 5 Armies was his scene. Like he had a couple of really good scenes for sure, but that was it. Like there wasn't enough to him outside of that. But yeah, he's one of the dwarves that I would consider characterized rather than not.
Yeah. There's 6 dwarves in Time Bandits, which strikes me as enough dwarves.
All right, and on that entertaining line, Grim, where are you going to be? What are you up to? You said you get a game coming out.
Yes. Should be going to Kickstarter hopefully at the end of this month. We're doing playtesting, which you can see over on my Grim Streams channel on YouTube. So we're still finessing the rules. At some point, I will drag T-shirt into a game of it.
Someday.
But that's most of what I'm doing, and a couple of super secret projects. But my schedule is irregular at the moment because I'm not well. So we shall see how things go.
Did Chris ever get in touch with you about the solo thing?
No, don't think so.
Okay, I'll poke her again. All right, check out Grim, Postmortem Studios. Lots of games, like a crazy number of games.
Yes.
Some of which are light and fluffy, and some of which are dark and grim. T-shirt. What you got coming up? What you doing? Where can people find you?
Okay. Well, like I said, things have taken a really interesting turn for my channel because I'm no longer doing Twig on that channel. We're not going to be doing the Week in Geek on that channel any longer. I have built. No. I have built an extra account. I will get another channel going that will be more or less like the old channel and pretty much dedicated to the stuff the old channel was. The current old channel, the one I started out with, the one that is actually called T-Shirted Historian, is pretty much a dedicated Fist of the North Star channel at this point. I have kind of unlisted all my old videos and stuff on it, and it's nothing but Fist of the North Star material because it's getting the views. It's bringing in the money, and that's kind of what I'm after. So I think at this point it's a good idea to just go ahead and split channels and do 2 different things. I mean, it's the best thing to do.
So the summertime weekly gaming discussions are going on a different channel?
Yes, they will be happening on a different channel, but it'll still follow the same format as it used to. So there will be that, and of course you're invited.
Oh, are we doing Dungeons and Discussions?
Dungeons and Discussions, yep.
Yeah.
Because it's almost that time.
All right.
But in the meantime, you should check out my Fist of the North Star channel because, one, I have some pretty deep dives on Fist of the North Star lore, including some really good essays that are catching lots and lots of views, as well as character discussions. And I'm also doing reviews of the anime each week as it drops. So I'm staying on top of that. And we have shorts and things. Basically, that channel is going to be all things Fist of the North Star before it's all over with. And And when I finally run out of Fist of the North Star things to talk about, I will probably move on to Tetsuo Ohara's other properties like The Magnificent Bastard, The Legend of Keiji, which I'm sure Grim would love that. And maybe even Soten no Ken. So, we'll see.
I was not familiar with Fist of the North Star, so we'll take a look.
Absolutely, you should. It's one of the best anime ever made because it is foundational anime. It is the anime that exists and has caused future anime to exist, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Berserk,
Silence Shill,
Kingan Ashura, Baki.
All right, Random.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for having me on. So the latest thing that I've got up on my channel is a video covering the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring. Basically going into why it is so incredibly good, because it's amazing how they managed to pull that off. That video is done quite well, so I am currently planning on doing more ridiculously in-depth, long, slow videos covering The Lord of the Rings. The next video that I'm going to release, though, is pretty much ready to go. It's probably going to be out this week, and that is an evisceration of a TV show by the name of Has Been Hotel, if any of you are familiar with that.
I've heard of it, and I have not watched it. I keep meaning to.
Definitely do not. But,
oh. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought the assassin guy was supposed to be pretty cool, though.
The assassin?
The bounty hunter. The bounty hunter guy?
That is not a character in Season 1. He could be in Season 2. There isn't a bounty hunter in Season 1.
Norman Reedus played him?
Definitely not in Season 1.
Okay.
You could be thinking of Hell of a Boss. That's apparently they're spin-offs of each other or something.
Yeah, it's Hell of a Boss. That's what it was.
Okay, yeah, that I've not seen. I've only watched Season 1 of Has Been Hotel, and my God, it is broken in ways that I had not yet experienced. It's it is the most thematically bungled thing I have perhaps ever seen.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. And if anyone is interested in Spartacus or has seen it, I watched the original first season when it came out, and then the actor died, and I had no idea they'd kept going with the show until Random's breakdown. So I was very excited. So I do want to strongly encourage everyone in the chat to check out his videos the next time you have 35 hours with nothing to do.
Oh. Always put them on in the background when I'm playing 7 Days to Die.
And I think he is competing with Mahler these days, because the first 7 minutes in Lord of the Rings he made an hour and 10-minute video on. Without being repetitive or boring. So
yeah,
Mahler is pretty awesome. So
I mean, his longest video is the
Star Wars video.
Yeah, the Star Wars Outlaws one is 17 hours long.
Yeah.
I don't think I will ever be able to release, because of the way copyright works on YouTube, I don't think it is possible right now to release a video using movie footage that is 17 hours long. The reason he was able to do that is because it's a video game. So essentially that's kind of why I've decided to split my Lord of the Rings videos into segments, because I can't release a 10-hour video using footage from Fellowship of the Ring for 10 hours. It's just not feasible, unfortunately.
Your Spartacus videos were very, very good, though.
Thank you.
I think they're probably one of my favorite long-form videos on. And part of it is just because I liked the original season in the first place, but they're really well done. And I suspect that there are people somewhere now going, "Why is everyone watching Spartacus all of a sudden?"
Yeah. No, I did get quite a few comments from people saying that they didn't believe me at the beginning, and then they got like an hour into my first video and they were like, okay, I'm pausing and I'll come back when I finish the show. Like, quite a few people did that because I convinced them to watch season 1, which that was kind of the goal. So I'm happy that it worked.
Jacob Ironside says he has subbed to you all. So
awesome.
So, I am, of course, the Eclectic Goat. This is the season finale for Season 2 of Slice and Dice. This is the time of year where everyone's schedules start to go wonky, and so we stop covering gaming stuff for a while and start covering other things. For the next 4 weeks, Eraser and Wayfarer and I are going to be discussing Crusades, or Crusade, I guess there was no S on the end of it, which was a spin-off of Babylon 5. I am rewatching it for the first time in a while, and man, I had forgotten how much I hate myself agreeing to this.
I was about to say, you do know that we don't call it Crusade, right? We call it Galen the Technomage Show.
I am getting ready to call it Sci-Fi's Rings of Power. So,
wow,
what's the most interesting thing in it?
So we are going to be comparing Babylon 5 and Crusade and why one worked so well and one failed so badly. That will be for the next 4 weeks. Next week, we are going to start off by talking about the cast and characters. And after that, we are going to be doing shows you've never seen, covering Harsh Realm, which was a very short-lived show that honestly was not wonderful in the 90s because no one really understood what virtual reality would really look like. And is one of the shows I really desperately wish they would try and remake with modern special effects and capabilities and understandings. I think it would do much better in the current day and age. Just a quick note for anyone who has missed it. I have some upcoming medical stuff myself. This is the reason I set up the coffee account, because I am already got bills rolling in. Jacob Ironside says I haven't gotten past episode 4 of Crusade. And Eraser says he's fallen asleep to Call of Arms 5 times now. I managed to get through all of them, Call of Arms and the entire series, in 3 days. I just ripped the Band-Aid off. It was terrible. But I do not think that is going to interfere with my streaming. I hope not. But there is definitely a but there, just in case.
Always a but.
Yeah, there's always a but. Yeah, I haven't even had the appointments yet, and I've already got bills for like $1,400. So, if anybody can spare not having a cup of coffee and throw some into my coffee account, that would be great. Because things were already rough, but like I said, I don't think it's going to interfere too much with streaming, unless it turns out to be something I have to have surgery for, in which case I should have plenty of time to give people heads up. I am still doing video game streams kind of sporadically when I can. And in June, I am going to be joining Jacob Ironsides on Tuesday nights, the third. Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong. The third Tuesday of every month, we are going to go over Babylon 5 episode by episode, as a palate cleanser to discussing Crusade. So, I hope that everybody has a great night. I want to thank my panel for coming. You have all been fabulous. Love the conversation. Thank you very much to the chat for being here and for being active as always. And I hope you all have a wonderful night and happy headbutting.
It's a fucking goat! Eclectic Goat's got videos of indie authors and cinema love. A passion for the weird and the strange. She's snappily dressed and only slightly deranged. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. Shows might be a little improper. We've got real zombie, fake whizzes the otter, pizza in one hoof, glass in the other, deciding which role-playing games we will cover. Come and meet the Eclectic Goat, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy headbutting, come join the herd. black and white screens, crappy horror with low budget scenes. Choose on the history, spits out the law. Time for another whiskey pour. Come and meet the eclectic dope, lover of classics and whiskey notes, disciple of horror and the written word. Happy head buddy, come join the